And I got to thinking about Dennis again. But he was the first ride I got. I got it from Fort Morgan to Glenwood Springs, Colorado. Back in 2008, he had been blown up in an oil well, looked horrific. And he knew it. He hated it. Hated how children looked at him. He was drinking like crazy, all the way across the Front Range of the Rocky Mountains. Vodka. That was his drink. Huge belts out of this. I think it might have been a gallon bottle. And he was getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, obviously, as the further we got. Had a computer in his truck. This is back before, broadband Wi-Fi in a vehicle was a common thing. He got a big settlement from the oil well accident. And so he had broadband Wi-Fi in his truck. And I was sending out couch surfing requests all along I-70 trying to get in somewhere so I didn't have to sleep out in the mountain snow in May in Colorado, but I could get inside with somebody. But I had to keep him going until I could figure out a way where that was going to be. Glenwood Springs was the place. We got there. He had started talking to me about how he felt, how children looked at him. That's the one thing that reminds me, that really sticks in my head, was that he was bothered, terribly bothered, by how kids reacted to his appearance. He had his wife on speakerphone in the truck. I think it was through OnStar. You could hear in her voice. He kept telling her, "No, I'm not drinking. I haven't had anything to drink." And she knew. She knew. He started getting kind of dark as we approached Glenwood Springs. Had my accommodations set up for the night. And he desperately he didn't want me to leave. He wanted to continue talking to me. We'd spent 5 hours in that truck. Tried to, share what I knew. I'd been through alcoholism, or at least the symptoms of it. I understood what it was. And I was talking to him on a human level, and he appreciated that. He really didn't want me to go. But by the time we got there, I was done with him. He was getting really, really dark. There was a blackness about him that didn't scare me, but it also, something told me, yeah, it's best to carry on. And I told him, I'm like, you know what? I like you, Dennis. I appreciate the ride. He was offering to take me to Utah the next day. And, I just don't want to be around you. I can't stand vodka, I'm done. I got to go. Never talked to him again. Exchanged numbers and all that, but that's, how that goes. Never talked to him again. And a year later, I found out that he had been estranged from his wife. She'd thrown him out of the house, domestic violence. He was living in a hotel in Montrose. That's where he was from. One day, he decided to go back to his house. And she called the cops, of course. He was drunk. He got into the garage somehow, locked himself in there, barricaded himself in there. Police come, decide, well, we're going to extract you, Dennis. They entered the garage, barged into the garage, probably broke into it. And they didn't realize that he had guns stashed in there. And he shot 3 cops. I think he killed one. Killed one or killed 2, I forget now. And then he took the gun and killed himself. That was it. I found this in the Denver Post. I think it was the Denver mayor or the Colorado governor was going to Montrose to attend one of the police officers' funerals. That was Dennis. That was my very first ride. And obviously, this is more than a year later, 2009, when all of that happened. And he has turned into that 5 hours in that truck with one specific human being, one very traumatized human being, has had such a profound effect. You know what he didn't tell me? That the reason he was in such bad shape, that he looked how he looked, was because when he caught on fire, he ran back into the flames to shut a valve off so other people wouldn't get fried, wouldn't get burned up. He didn't just stop, drop, and roll. He went back in there before he put himself out to try to help other people, or at least keep the same thing from happening to other people. He didn't tell me any of that. Dennis Gurney was a complex human being that had been through more hell than you and I can imagine. I don't know how. I seriously don't think that I would have went through 20 years of that. The surgeries. He died on the operating table more than once. He had pig cadavers for skin. A complex man. A hero and a cop killer. All in one flesh bag. Right? But he couldn't deal with what had happened to him. He couldn't deal with how it made him feel. Couldn't deal with how people reacted to him. He did all right for a long time, but he reached a point. Doctors thought he was going to live another 20 years. He got past that 20-year point and apparently deteriorated. Psychologically, he couldn't stand or couldn't move forward smoothly beyond that point that he'd sort of psyched himself up to get to. Best I can tell. He couldn't do it. He couldn't live without vodka. Vodka was the one thing, even though it was destroying his life, vodka was the one thing that helped him deal with his life. A very poor thing, but it's the only thing he had. He couldn't get his life together. He could not be happy. He couldn't accept it. A terrible story. 5 hours with that guy. Profound. And this was the very first. You wonder why I started hitchhiking, why I really got into hitchhiking? That was the very first real ride I got. Yeah. Hitchhiking's cool. Anyway. Fast forward a couple of years, I'm pondering and thinking about Dennis. And out of that, all of that came the Dennis Doctrine. And I think it was the germination of it, the seed, came from that moment at that gas station outside the Glenwood Suites in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, where I had a choice. I could either stay with him that night or I could go and, hang out with these strangers, these couch surfers that I had contacted. And it wasn't really a choice. I wasn't going to stay there anyway, but I could have. I could have tried to help him. I could have tried this and I could have tried that. I don't know what would have happened. The blackness was there. I don't think he was ever going to get violent. I'm not saying something would have happened to me. It's not the point anyway. The point that came out of that, though, in my head, was that you have a choice to make, eventually, with someone who's sitting in the ditch. Metaphorically sitting in the ditch. It's a hitchhiking metaphor, okay? That's why I'm thinking this way. So I got a picture. Dennis is here. Psychologically, emotionally, he's in the ditch. He can't deal with his life. He can't deal with anything. Now, if you're a decent human being, you want to extend your hand and help him. I tried that. For the 5 hours I was in that truck, I did what I could do. I talked about what I knew. I told him the truth. I was honest with him. I didn't candy coat anything. He picked up on that. I wasn't giving him platitudes at all. I was being honest and truthful and straightforward with him. He appreciated it. But that's all I could do. And beyond that point, you have a choice to make. Turning to the metaphor, if someone's sitting in the ditch, you have a choice to either sit down with them and try to help them, try to motivate them, try to get them to use their own legs, to stand up and keep walking forward. You can't carry him. You can carry him a few steps. It's going to wear you down. It's going to detract and distract you from what it is you're trying to accomplish. And eventually, you're going to have to decide, do I sit here in the ditch with this person and sacrifice what it is I feel like I'm intended to do? I'm meant to do, what I intend to accomplish for myself. Am I willing to sacrifice it for this person who refuses or can't use their own legs to find their way forward? It's a choice. And some people think it's noble and righteous to sit in the ditch with somebody who refuses to stand up and sacrifice themselves to that person or for that person. I personally don't think so. I can't imagine a scenario, very many scenarios where I'd do that. Why am I telling you this story? And that's what I call the Dennis Doctrine. I have talked about the Dennis Doctrine obliquely. I may have actually gotten into it once or twice on the show. I don't remember. But this ties into great many things. And it ties into what Brian and I were discussing rather passionately last week. When it comes to propaganda, dogma, orthodoxy, whether or not someone chooses to try to see the world as it is, chooses to try, whether or not they succeed doesn't matter. We all have, faulty tools of perception. We're going to miss some of these things. All right, we're going to see things in distorted ways and views. Trying to see things as they are rather than just surrendering to something easy, something that explains everything for us. That's what I was talking about when I used that infamous phrase, fuck them, last weekend. The people who refuse to try to stand up on their own legs, their own cognitive legs, who refuse to stand up and be a man, be an individual, and just rely upon something being fed to them and then regurgitating it as faux wisdom. You have a choice. You can try to save those people. You can try to talk reason to those people. It never works. Brian pointed out why, I think either in the same episode or the week before, because you can never change a person's mind with facts. This is Jonathan Haidt. You're not going to reason a person to change their mind. You're not going to reason with them to the point where, oh, I see what you're saying now. If a person is that entrenched, facts will not change their mind. You've got to massage them. You've got to feed the elephant, as Haidt put it. Feed the emotions. Facts will not change a doctrinaire's mind. Reason will not change their mind. I said this in one of the very first episodes I put out in 2018, almost 3 years ago. On this show, the switch is internal. That's what I was talking about. The person has to want to use their own mind. They have to want to be an original entity instead of a fabricant. It isn't hard to find that. It is hard to find those people, but it's not hard to detect them. A little poking and prodding, a little listening. All you got to do is open your ears, ask maybe 2-3 questions. 2-3 just general questions. And you can figure out if you're dealing with a fabricant or an actual human being, a real man, a man, his own man or woman, or someone who's been recycled and manufactured intellectually and cognitively, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. Not hard. And when you run into those people, I have come to the conclusion that you are wasting your time trying to save these people, trying to convince these people of anything, of anything. I was thinking once upon a time, I forget his name, Leo Ryan. Does that name ring a bell? Leo Ryan. Should. This guy was a senator, congressman. I don't remember what he was. I don't remember where he's from. Remember what he did, though. He's the guy that went down to Jonestown, French Guiana, I think. Is that right? I hope so. Whatever. Jonestown, Jimmy Jones, cult compound. Had all of his followers down there. People were worried about these followers. Want to go rescue him. There he goes. They let him in. Jim Jones let him in. He starts talking to these people. He's trying to talk these people into leaving Jonestown. Trying to convince them to leave. A few people did. A few people, I think, actually got on the plane or were getting ready to get on the plane. This just popped into my head. Normally, I would have researched this. But anyway, you go research it. Leo Ryan. That man, balls. That was a wonderful human being. Altruistic. Sacrificed himself for those people. I don't think he intended to. I don't think he thought that that story was going to end the way it did. But he did go down there, and he did wind up convincing or helping or encouraging a few people to leave. He tried like hell. Have you seen the images of Jonestown after they drank their Flavor Aid? And it was Flavor Aid. It wasn't Kool-Aid. Flavor Aid. Have you seen the images of the people that Leo Ryan could not convince? The piles of bodies that were there, bloating in the heat because Leo Ryan could not change their mind. A few people, yes. You know what happened to Leo Ryan? Spoiler alert, he's dead. He was attacked on the tarmac, I think getting on his plane. Jim Jones and his boys, and women, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to be sexist. Maybe there were women involved. Well, took their guns and attacked the plane. Attacked him on the tarmac, killed him. There's pictures of him as well. Leo Ryan, Senator Leo Ryan, I hope it's a senator, lying there dead on the tarmac after he went down and tried to save those people. Me personally, I think it's a noble thing to do. I think it's a noble gesture. I think it's a wonderful thing that Leo did, trying to go down there, trying to save these people, trying to trigger that button in their head, that little, trying to maybe flick them at the back of the head like, hey, this is a cult. Is the button like short-circuiting? Go take a look at the pictures of how successful he was. You cannot change anybody's mind. They have to want to change it. They have to be interested. They have to be concerned with reality themselves. You cannot engineer that for them. In fact, the more you try, the harder it's going to get. Have you heard about social momentum? Have I told you? Yes, I have told you about social momentum. This ties into Donald Trump. I guess I can bring this home now. And the more you try to convince people, the more you try to argue with people, the more you try to shame people, even if they're 100,000% wrong, the more you try to argue with people, the harder they dig their claws in. You're not having a discussion or a debate. There's not going to be a winner and a loser of this debate. There's just going to be two losers. You're going to lose because you can't convince him that you won, if he doesn't want to be convinced. The social momentum applies here because how many of us, thanks to social media, other things, the fact that each and every one of us talk politics now, like we used to talk baseball. How many of us have gone online and made our proclamations public? I believe this, and I believe this, and I believe this. I am a Trump supporter. I am a righteous, noble savage. I am a savage-worshipping liberal. Of the noble savage, it's coming. It's coming. The return is nigh. How many people have done that? How many of us have done that? I have done this. I have done this. I have done this. My anti-Tea Party days, my few months in the resistance, yes, I have done this, and I remember. I know what social momentum is, and I know how painful it is to have to recount it, have to renounce your beliefs, have to renounce your religion. I understand how hard and difficult this is. Social momentum. People will, first, they're not going to change their mind anyway, just to spite you. But when you've got all of this past behavior and past statements, past rhetoric that's been deployed, they have to maintain it. They have to justify it. They have to save face, status. So they just compound it. They just, you know what? Screw it. I'm in it. I'm in it to win it. Yeah, I might have been wrong. Screw it. I'm going to win this anyway. I'm not going to let these people know that I was wrong. I'm sure as hell not going to let my friends know that I've been wrong about all this stuff for so long. And then reason is gone. Whatever is being mistaken in the head, whatever that is up there, isn't reason. That's when you turn into the retained attorney that I've talked about. And whatever faculties of reason you have up in your brain, they are shut down and the attorney takes over. You are Johnny Cochran defending O.J. Simpson. I mean, even Tim McVeigh had a lawyer. That's what your faculties, your ability to reason. You're not reasoning anything. You're rationalizing, you're arguing, you're litigating. That's where your faculties of reason go. And that's all a result of, not all, shouldn't say that, but that a large part of that is social momentum. Things you said, and the humiliation that'll come with having to walk it back, having to say, I was wrong. I've experienced this. It sucks. Especially if you've been firmly entrenched within a camp for a certain amount of time. Then the faithful, the congregation, they'll see you as a blasphemer, a traitor. Seen it. Suddenly you're not on their side. You are not worshiping the same Jesus. You're a heretic. All of a sudden, you're not going to make them reconsider their beliefs. How many people do you think have reconsidered their Catholicism because somebody decided not to go to church? One of their friends decided not to go to church. What are they more likely to say? Oh, he's been lost. The devil got him. I've had so many people come at me in the last 3 years trying to resave me, to get me back into the liberal church. What happened to you, Todd? Heard that so many times. And it always devolves into when it doesn't work. And I tell them I really don't appreciate their proselytizing and trying to, missionize to me. Always devolved into like a shouting match. As much of a shouting match as you can get up. But you know what I'm talking about. The personal attacks begin. I know where that's going immediately. I have participated in it enough to understand the point of no return. Point being, you are not going to change these people's minds. Social momentum